Hello everypony, and welcome back to My Little Pony What Works, and the best and worst of Season 4. I'll go right ahead and say that Season 4 is my favorite season. Just looking at how I graded the season, most of the episodes received 3 stars or higher. But there were a couple of episodes I did find problematic, so let's go over those episodes in the bottom 5 before we get to my personal top 5 for Season 4. Number 5, Freeze a Crowd. Now, keep in mind, I didn't hate this episode. In fact, I quite liked it. The humor was great, it had a great moral, and it did give some interesting traits to one of the least interesting characters of the show. On the other hoof, the story takes forever to get going, and the moral feels wasted in the end. Again, not bad, just frustratingly good. Number 4, Rarity Takes Manhattan. Again, I don't hate this episode. In fact, the conflict idea was great. It's everything else I dislike. Coco, the resolution with her, the first portion of the song, and, oh god, the pacing. However, I should probably keep quiet because I'm still feeling the force from Eliora's powerful voice. So, while I'm in the minority on this episode, I'd still won't put it near the bottom 10. Number 3, Tradia. I wish I could have liked this episode more. Honestly, I think the hardest story to tackle in MLP is when they separate the group in the same story. I mean, it has been done well, even with this season with the Equestria games. But when you split the story, you risk ending up with a sloppy execution, which unfortunately happened to Tradia. Too much focus was put on Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy, and all the other stories were put in the background. Not to mention the terrible dialogue, predictable not making sense story, and the morals don't connect well. And yet it's a guilty pleasure. Number 2, Some Pony to Watch Over Me. I wanted to like this episode, I really did. The setup was perfect. Applebloom stays home alone and has to prove herself to Applejack that she can be responsible. Instead, it devolves into an Applejack story where she acts stupidly. Again. However, this episode has one of the most contradictory morals, if not the most destructive moral of the show. So, yeah, this gives me a much needed reason to dislike it. The next episode, and the worst episode of Season 4, I have something else to say about it. Number 1, Rainbow Falls. I'm going to be incredibly blunt here. Rainbow Falls can go pucker up on the palest part of my posterior. I've never felt this insulted watching an all-ages cartoon since, wow, Season 1. Look, the point is, nothing in this episode made sense. There were so many plot transgressions that don't add up. Bulk Biceps not being able to get off the ground despite being Wonderbolt's material, Spitfire and Fleetfoot manipulating Dash into joining the Cloudsdale team, basically forcing the situation upon her unnaturally, and here's something no one talked about. No one thought to bring a backup in case something like this happened? From the moment the episode started, there was no recovery. Nothing worked. I said this once, I'll say it again. Rainbow Falls brings out the stupid in ponies. Let us never travel here ever again. Well, that was rough. Let's turn this around with some of my favorite episodes, not just from the season, but of the entire show. Number 5, Flight to the Finish. If there are any underlying themes to Season 4, they would be improvement and progression. Flight to the Finish demonstrates both. It improved upon past season episode faults with the Showstoppers and One Bad Apple, and showed the Cutie Crusaders' progression as characters since Season 1, not to mention being the best Scootaloo episode. Yeah, I said it. Flight to the Finish was better than Sleepless in Ponyville. And so are these other 4. Number 4, Princess Twilight Sparkle. Easily my favorite of the season openers. This is the episode that started the underlying theme of improvement. A lot of the problems from the Crystal Empire were fixed, including the subdued villain with the plants, utilization of every character to the plot while remaining Twilight's story, and having the story arc device not be invisible to the main 6. It was out in the open for everyone, including the Royal Sisters to see. And with the exception of Rainbow Falls, the story arc culminated well. So what can top the best season premiere? Well, how about... Number 3, Maud Pie. Also known as the funniest episode of the show. I'm serious, every joke in this episode worked. Even the dumber ones with Rarity's hat was actually followed up on in a well-executed reaction. Not to mention, Mom was a great character, the conflict was complex, and Pinkie Pie learned a mature moral. This episode is going into my personal top 5, along with... Number 2, Twilight's Kingdom. Epic. Just epic. Meghan McCarthy is still best writer. I loved every single second of this episode. Most seconds of this episode. Everything culminating from Season 3 and even Season 2 was resolved in this episode. Twilight reaches her epiphany, Discord earns being a keybringer over the course of a season, and we have the best villain of the show. So, what could possibly top that? Number 1, Pinkie Pride. Weird Al and Pinkie Pie go head-to-head in a goof-off. How could I not put this in the top spot? The way I make my episode list in terms of favorites and least favorites is overall enjoyment. If I had zero enjoyment watching episodes such as Rainbow Falls, it would go towards the bottom. The amount of fun I had watching Pinkie Pride, from the songs, to the humor, to the animation, and the key reveal, adds to my overall enjoyment of the episode. As a result, Pinkie Pride is put into my top 5 favorite episodes, as well as the best episode of Season 4. And that's it for the best and worst of Season 4. I hope you enjoyed the season as much as I did, and next time, in celebration with My Little Pony's 30th anniversary, and more than likely my 10,000 subscriber special, I'll be taking a look at all the Generation 1 specials, starting with Rescue at Midnight Castle. Until then, I'm the Voice of Reason, and I'll see you next time.